everything just changed. The courtroom. Silence was shattered by a single filing. Justin Baldoni has officially responded to Blake Lively's shocking attempt to erase her own sworn deposition from the case, and the details are even more explosive than anyone expected. What started as a quiet motion has erupted into a full-scale legal battle over truth, transparency, and power in Hollywood. Baldoni is not backing down. In fact, he has just accused Lively of trying to rewrite the story and remove key testimony that could dramatically shift the outcome of the entire case. His legal team has made it clear that this is not just about one celebrity versus another. It is about whether public figures can simply delete parts of the record when the truth becomes inconvenient, in a move that has stunned legal experts. Baldoni is now demanding that Lively be held accountable, not just for her words, but for her attempts to take them back. The filing goes deep into legal precedent questions, the timing of Lively's motion, and even suggests this may be part of a much larger pattern of manipulating perception behind closed doors. This is no longer a private dispute. It is a public showdown where every line of sworn testimony could tilt the balance, and where the stakes are not only legal but reputational and professional. Baldoni is drawing a hard line, and he is doing it in full view of the court and the media. And if what his filing suggests is true, then this is just the beginning. Because the attempt to erase a deposition might actually shine an even brighter light on what was said during it. And that could change everything for Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and everyone watching this case unfold. The courtroom atmosphere was thick with anticipation as documents began surfacing that suggested Blake Lively was attempting to retract her own sworn deposition from the official court record, a move that instantly raised eyebrows across Hollywood. And the legal world, Justin Baldoni, who had remained publicly composed throughout much of the proceedings, finally broke his silence in a formal yet pointed response that challenged the credibility, timing, and intent behind Lively's actions, while Lively's legal team painted her attempt as a protective measure, citing personal distress and alleged procedural confusion. Baldoni, through his attorneys, fired back, questioning why such a move would only come now and not during the earlier phases of discovery. The legal narrative took a dramatic turn when Baldoni emphasized that removing or sealing any portion of a deposition, particularly one given voluntarily and under oath, undermines the integrity of the judicial process and may suggest a selective narrative strategy aimed at limiting exposure to potentially damaging testimony. The filing submitted by Baldoni contained references to key moments in the deposition, which reportedly included inconsistencies in Lively's recounting of interactions with Baldoni and her knowledge of the events surrounding the Wayfarer funding deal, which lies at the heart of the defamation lawsuit. The actor, director, and producer, who had previously been accused by Lively of manipulating public perception and leveraging media in his favor, used his response not just to challenge Lively's legal maneuver, but to reinforce the broader theme of transparency and truth. Baldoni made it clear that he would not allow critical elements of the case, especially testimony that could help establish motive or undermine credibility, to be quietly removed or redacted behind closed doors. The document characterized Lively's attempt as deeply troubling, suggesting that such efforts could lead to an unfair trial and a distorted public understanding of what is really at stake. Furthermore, the response delved into legal precedent, drawing upon multiple California and federal cases where parties had unsuccessfully tried to withdraw testimony that later proved inconvenient or self-damaging. Baldoni argued that this tactic has been widely condemned by courts as a violation of due process and an abuse of procedural protections. His legal team framed Lively's motion as a public relations maneuver rather than a legitimate legal necessity, describing it as a calculated act designed to sanitize her role in the controversy while still publicly maintaining the appearance of victimhood. What made this moment particularly compelling for observers and court watchers was the juxtaposition between Lively's polished public image and the aggressive legal strategy unfolding behind the scenes, a strategy that Baldoni seemed determined to expose piece by piece, not through leaks or media spin, but through the court record itself. In fact, his response directly called out what it described as a pattern of behavior by Lively to present curated narratives to the media while attempting to suppress contradictory details within the courtroom. Baldoni pointed to prior instances where statements made by Lively's team to the press appeared to contradict key portions of her own deposition testimony, while he stopped short of accusing her of perjury. The implication was clear. There are inconsistencies that deserve further scrutiny, and that scrutiny should happen in full view of the court, not behind sealed documents. The emotional undertones of the filing were unmistakable. Baldoni referenced the personal toll the lawsuit had taken on his reputation, career, and personal life, framing the deposition as one of the few concrete tools available to him in establishing the truth. He argued that stripping parts of it away now, especially after discovery deadlines had passed, was tantamount to rewriting history. The response also revealed that Baldoni had declined multiple opportunities to resolve the case, quietly suggesting that any potential settlement was rejected, in part because he believed the deposition would ultimately vindicate him not only legally, but in the court of public opinion. His legal team warned the court that granting Lively's request would set a dangerous precedent, allowing powerful figures to retract unfavorable testimony long after giving it based on vague claims of emotional discomfort or alleged procedural confusion. They insisted that such a move would erode trust in the deposition process and unfairly disadvantage the opposing party. The filing then turned sharply toward the content of the deposition itself. Without quoting it directly, the document hinted that Lively made admissions regarding her communication with media outlets, private conversations about Baldoni, and her role in drafting or reviewing certain emails that later became part of the dispute. The strategic decision not to directly quote the deposition seemed to be a calculated move, respecting court confidentiality rules while still alerting the judge to the high stakes involved. Baldoni also attached to the filing a declaration from his attorney which described the circumstances surrounding the deposition, including repeated confirmations from Lively's counsel that she was participating voluntarily and without duress. This point was raised to directly counter any later claims that she had been coerced or misled into giving statements she now sought to retract or revise. At one point, the response drew an analogy to a chess game, describing Lively's filing as an attempt to take back a move several turns, after making it only because she now saw that it would cost her the match. The metaphor landed powerfully with media outlets covering the case, many of whom have begun framing this legal dispute as a battle of truth versus image, with Baldoni placing himself squarely on the side of transparency and accountability. While Lively's legal filing focused heavily on protecting her mental well-being from what her attorneys described as weaponized legal disclosures, Baldoni framed his opposition as a defensive principle. He argued that while emotional distress was real and valid, it could not serve as a retroactive justification for altering the record, especially when the deposition had already influenced case strategy, discovery scope, and media narratives. His team emphasized that no matter how famous or influential a litigant may be, they are not entitled to rewrite sworn testimony because it later becomes embarrassing, inconvenient, or inconsistent with public messaging. Additionally, the filing noted that Lively had ample opportunity during the deposition to clarify or correct her statements, and that the transcript reflects multiple instances where her own counsel took breaks, conferred privately, and even requested clarifications, all of which further undermined the claim that her statements were given under confusion or fatigue. If there were genuine concerns about the deposition, they argued the appropriate time to raise them was during or immediately after, not months later, and certainly not when trial preparation had already incorporated that testimony as a foundational element. The court has not yet ruled on Lively's request, but the response from Baldoni has set the stage for a heated procedural showdown with implications that extend beyond just the parties involved. Legal experts weighing in have described the issue as a potential inflection point in celebrity litigation, where the rules of ordinary civil procedure often collide with the unique pressures of fame, reputation management, and media narratives. Baldoni appears poised to use this moment to draw a line in the sand, signaling that he is not just fighting for personal vindication, but for a broader principle about honesty and accountability. In legal processes, the public reaction has been swift, with commentators split between sympathy for Lively's personal discomfort and concern about what this motion could mean for the transparency of civil proceedings, especially in high-profile cases where image often competes with evidence. While some observers argue that individuals should have the right to redact deeply personal or sensitive content, others have pointed out that when one chooses to file suit or participate in litigation, especially against a fellow public figure, that choice comes with responsibilities, one of which is allowing the truth to stand, even when it is messy, uncomfortable, or potentially damaging. Baldoni clearly understands this tension and appears to be betting that public opinion will ultimately side with transparency over selective disclosure in this increasingly tangled legal drama. As the court awaited a hearing date to address the contentious motion to strike Blake Lively's deposition, The legal world remained abuzz with speculation regarding what exactly was in the deposition that had sparked such a drastic attempt at removal. Legal analysts pored over previous court filings, press statements, and even red carpet interviews in an effort to piece together the likely content that now appeared to have become a liability for Lively. Her decision to take the stand was once viewed as a bold move, an effort to show confidence and transparency. But the sudden pivot raised serious questions about whether her original testimony inadvertently revealed contradictions or truths that no longer aligned with her legal strategy. Or public narrative. Justin Baldoni, through his attorneys, left no room for misinterpretation in his response, as they underscored the importance of the deposition as a primary source of sworn testimony in a case defined by public perception, legal claims, and emotional fallout. They emphasized that depositions were not casual conversations, but legally binding statements that served as a cornerstone for both defense and prosecution strategy. Attempts to retract them, post hoc, they argued, posed a threat to the structural integrity of civil justice, particularly in cases involving high-profile figures with significant media influence. Baldoni, who had remained relatively quiet through months of accusations, filings, and speculation, appeared to reach a turning point in tone. The response read more like a manifesto than a simple objection. It painted a picture of a man fighting not only for his name, but for the right to a fair and balanced process where celebrity does not shield one from accountability. His legal team insisted that allowing a retraction would embolden others in similar situations to weaponize their fame to manipulate court records, erase uncomfortable truths, and shift blame when cornered by their own words. The timing of Lively's motion was also a major focus of the response. According to Baldoni, her deposition had already played a pivotal role in several legal decisions, including motions to compel evidence discovery protocols and even settlement discussions. His attorneys warned that undoing her testimony would not only disrupt the rhythm of the trial, but cause irreparable prejudice to his case, potentially requiring them to revise their entire legal strategy at a point when deadlines were already closing. In this argument struck a chord with legal observers who noted that courts are often reluctant to allow significant alterations to the record unless there is clear evidence of coercion, fraud, or procedural misconduct, none of which Lively's team had alleged. Instead, their filing appeared to center on claims of emotional harm and personal confusion, grounds that, while important in personal contexts, do not typically meet the high standard required for nullifying sworn testimony, especially in a civil case involving two public figures with access to top-tier legal representation. Baldoni then went a step further, subtly accusing Lively's legal team of attempting to control the narrative through selective exposure. He referenced previous public statements by her team that seemed designed to sway public opinion while keeping damaging legal truths hidden from view. This tactic, he argued, was not just unfair to him, but to the court and to the public who had followed the case with growing interest and concern. It was a bold accusation, one that seemed designed to place the court in a position of defending the sanctity of the judicial process against the encroachment of media manipulation and selective truth-telling. The filing also included references to depositions given by third parties who, according to Baldoni, corroborated elements of his version of events and whose testimonies were directly connected to statements made by Lively during her own deposition. Removing her testimony, he warned, would disrupt the coherence of these interrelated accounts and could potentially force the court to disregard critical context that had already shaped its understanding of the case at one point. The response leaned heavily into a philosophical argument about justice itself. Baldoni, through his counsel, reminded the court that justice requires the courage to face uncomfortable truths, even when they come from those we admire or empathize with. He acknowledged the emotional toll that litigation can take, particularly on public figures, but argued that such stress cannot become a justification for erasing parts of the truth or rewriting the narrative mid-trial. The message was clear. This was about more than just a legal battle. It was about principle, fairness, and the expectation that the rules should apply equally to all, regardless of fame, wealth, or influence. The filing also revealed that Baldoni had proposed a compromise in a private exchange between the attorneys before the formal motion was filed. According to his declaration, he had suggested redacting only the most sensitive lines if necessary, while preserving the overall deposition intact. But this offer was reportedly declined by Lively's team, who insisted on removing the entire transcript or sealing it in full, a demand that Baldoni argued was excessive, unreasonable, and suggestive of a broader intent to hide more than just personal discomfort. The judge has yet to issue a ruling, but sources close to the proceedings indicate that the court is taking the matter seriously and is likely to schedule a special hearing given the complex intersection of legal precedent, public interest, and celebrity influence at stake. This is not a simple question of privacy versus exposure, but one that touches on how far the court will go to protect individuals from their own sworn words and what implications such a move might have for future litigation. Involving public figures, Baldoni appears ready for that showdown and is preparing to call additional witnesses if needed to confirm the chain of events and discussions that led up to the deposition. His legal team has also signaled that they may seek sanctions if the court determines that the motion was frivolous or intended primarily to delay proceedings or manipulate the narrative. This potential escalation has only added to the drama surrounding the case, which has captivated audiences, not just because of the names involved, but because of the legal principles at stake. The story has become a microcosm of modern celebrity litigation, where fame intersects with responsibility, and where the truth must fight to stand against curated narratives and managed reputations. The public response to Baldoni's filing has been largely supportive, with many online commenters praising his refusal to back down and his insistence on transparency. Several legal analysts have echoed his concerns, warning that allowing such a retraction could incentivize future litigants to exploit emotional distress as a loophole to erase or obscure legally damaging testimony. Media coverage has also highlighted the gender dynamics of the case, with some commentators pointing out that Lively's team has consistently framed her as the emotional victim of the conflict, while Baldoni has been portrayed as overly strategic or cold in his legal moves. Yet this recent filing suggests a more layered reality, one where Baldoni too has faced significant emotional and reputational damage, and where both parties have used legal and public platforms to shape perception. The difference, Baldoni argues, is that he has not tried to alter the legal record to fit his narrative, and he believes that distinction should matter, not just in court but in the public conversation as well as the debate continues. Some insiders are already suggesting that this move by Lively may end up backfiring, drawing more attention to the deposition than it otherwise would have received, and creating an even stronger association between her legal strategy and the appearance of concealment or narrative control. One attorney familiar with the case noted that in high-profile litigation, attempts to suppress evidence often invite greater scrutiny, not less, especially when the public senses that key facts are being kept from view in response to the growing attention. Baldoni has reportedly instructed his team to prepare a timeline of events surrounding the deposition, its scheduling, approval, and subsequent discussions, which he may introduce at the next hearing to prove the transparency of the process and the fairness with which it was conducted. He has also hinted at the possibility of releasing portions of the transcript publicly if the court allows it, a move that would no doubt generate widespread interest, but could also raise ethical and procedural questions about publicity and due process. In a case already saturated with media attention, while Baldoni has maintained a firm stance, he has also expressed willingness to work within the legal system to find a solution that respects personal dignity without compromising the truth. This balanced approach may prove persuasive to the court, which will need to weigh the emotional concerns raised by Lively against the structural and procedural concerns raised by Baldoni. The hearing, expected in the coming weeks, may become one of the most pivotal moments in the case, setting the tone not just for the trial but for how the public perceives the integrity of the process and the fairness of both parties in pursuing their respective claims. Whether the court grants Lively's motion, denies it outright, or seeks a compromise, the implications will ripple beyond the walls of the courtroom, influencing how future celebrity cases are managed and how legal teams balance the need for privacy with the obligation to tell the full story. Baldoni, for his part, seems ready for that challenge. And if his filing is any indication, he is prepared to fight until the very end, not just for himself, but for a legal standard that does not bend to fame, fear, or media management as this legal storm intensifies. One thing is clear: Justin Baldoni is not retreating from the battlefield. Instead, he is charging forward, demanding transparency, and standing firm against any attempt to rewrite the official record. His response to Blake Lively's motion to strike her own deposition has transformed the trajectory of this case, shifting it from a private dispute into a very public reckoning about truth, accountability, and the legal limits of image control. What makes This even more significant is that Baldoni is not simply reacting emotionally. He is using legal precedent, strategic filings, and carefully constructed arguments to challenge what he believes is an attempt to bend the rules in favor of celebrity privilege. He is reminding the court and the public that sworn testimony matters, that the truth once spoken under oath cannot and should not be deleted, because it becomes inconvenient or uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Blake Lively finds herself at the center of a growing storm. Her move to retract or seal her deposition has raised more questions than answers, and may now draw more attention to the very statements she hoped to erase instead of fading quietly into the background. The deposition is now front and center, symbolizing a larger battle over narrative control and legal accountability. The next court hearing will be critical, not just for the outcome of this case, but for what it signals to the world about the justice system and whether public figures can rewrite their own words once they become part of the official record, as both sides prepare for what could be a dramatic confrontation in court. The world watches closely because what happens next could redefine how legal battles are fought and what it really means to speak the truth when everyone is watching and the stakes could not be higher.